Before we kick off Ignite, I would like to acknowledge and pay respects to the Yagamba people who are the traditional owners of the Gold Coast area and have been here for 23,000 years. I'd also like to acknowledge the other Aboriginal people from other regions who, like the Torres Strait and South Sea Islanders, who also now live in this region and have made an incredible contribution to the land and to the community. Welcome to Ignite! I am so excited to welcome you, and before I even kick off, and I want to say thank you for coming and joining us for this week. We are really, really excited about it. I think probably Jeff made the comment about the content, but the thing that we're most excited about is getting to spend this week with you, hear what you're thinking about, talk about tech. And I tweeted this morning saying this is a week where we get to talk tech for 4 days. It's brilliant. Now I just want to open and kind of set the scene. And this is a great quote from Bill Gates. We overestimate what's going to happen in 2 years, and we underestimate the change that will happen in 10. Now, I don't know if you were here 10 years ago. I stood on this stage and when we were doing Tech Ed, and I was launching SQL Server 2005, BizTalk Server 2006, and Visual Studio. Was anyone there for that launch? Wow. Well, thank you. Stand up. Put your hands up. Jeff Alexander said he was here. Oh, Andrew Coates. Very, very good. Now, I was on stage, and absolutely the things that I was excited about, I was a product manager, so I was due to be excited, but I was thinking fuzzy logic, I was the democratization of business intelligence, and all these things were absolutely at our fingertips and we could use them in the next 2 years. But I did not expect where we'd be today and the amount of data that we had. I think 44 zettabytes by 2020, but also a life where I'm assisted by a digital assistant that uses all the information that I have ever accessed, used, stored, as well as knowing my behavior that will help me through my day. So as I think about 2015 and the next 2 years, and I know you're probably here, I'm going to make an inference, you're probably here to solve problems, address opportunities, use technology that you've adopted, and you're thinking about today. But for the next 4 days, please go beyond and think about what could we be doing in 10 years from now, and let your imaginations run wild. Spark those ideas. I wanted to set the scene a little bit about Australia and what I think we are at a tipping point. Think about the incredible disruptive technologies and companies that we have in the world. Things like Uber and Airbnb that we would never even thought would be multi-billion capped companies that only started off a couple of years ago. Australia is an interesting tipping point. We think about, currently we have the highest unemployment that we've had in 13 years. We also have one of the most significant population growths in the world at 1.5% year over year. We are privileged because we've had a strong economy which has been grounded through a resource boom, and we've been beneficiaries of the things that have been underneath the ground. Well, 80,000 jobs have been lost in manufacturing and 40,000 jobs in mining in the last 5 years. A staggering, staggering number. We're also predicting, and we are very lucky if we're in this room, because we're predicting that by 2020, or actually 2017, that 70% of jobs will need digital literacy. We are absolutely very lucky because we live and breathe in the tech space. But we have to do more for the rest of those people who perhaps don't have the advantage of technology or haven't even considered a job in our industry. Now, I'm going to give you some innovation and a knowledge economy is absolutely an indicator of future social prosperity, economic prosperity. Australia has dropped in rankings of OECD countries in the last year. We're now ranked number 17. We've dropped in the number of R&D. We don't even stand with developed countries and the amount of money we spend on R&D. But I think the thing that is the rally call for all of us is around our education around STEM. So the best place in the world for highest rankings in science and maths is Shanghai. Australian students of the same age, when it comes to maths, are 3 years behind. When it comes to science, we're 2 years behind. So what do? Do we ask our students to stay in school for extra time so they can catch up? Or do we really think about what's going to become important for us as a country to really stimulate an amazing economy driven by great STEM, great R&D, and great technology? Now, that's the doom and gloom, but we have an amazing the necessity that has always been ours as a country that's far, far away from the rest of the world. We've had a dispersed population. It's one of the things that's going to make us great and prosperous and stand very strong. Now, we look around the innovation ecosystems around the world, and what is interesting is there are always things about those ecosystems that are unique. So I think Boston, New York, Israel, all those places have some strength. Well, there's some really amazing things going on in Australia. And if the R&D and the things that we're very, very strong is environment. So you think about the incredible energy resources we have with the sun and the water, around sustainability, defense and public safety, agriculture. And the number one manufacturing export from Australia is medtech. We have incredible technology around medtech. And one of the things that is driving this is access to hypercomputing, supercomputing, cloud technology that used to be only in the realms of universities is now available to us all. And that is a big driver of change and empowering these really innovative companies and ideas. I wanted to share a few stories with you. And what I love about these stories is it's not just the big and bold ambition and reaching for the stars that drives a great outcome. It's all the things that we learn along the way. And to illustrate that, let me talk a little bit about the first one. So this is an Australian company that was founded in 2006, and their whole purpose is about how do we create carbon neutral, clean energy. And so they have built a undersea, this is BioWave, and it will use the power of the currents and the waves to build renewable energy. This is the first in the world, and it's about to be built in Port Fairy in Victoria in December this year. Great collaboration across government and industry, the private sector, and academia to actually make this come to life. First in the world, and again, we're using the natural resources that we have an abundance of. The thing that underpins this is, of course, data, collecting data on the currents, collecting data on the energy that's created. We will learn so much from this big and bold ambition. The next one I want to talk about is a much closer local story. So, scramjets. Did you know we have an incredible heritage in scramjet technology and understanding in Australia? Super cool. Very, very cool. So here in Brisbane, at the University of Queensland, there is a wind tunnel that replicates the conditions that a scramjet would need to be flying at. I think it's Mark 8. They have a supercomputer to do the data analytics, and it's a collaboration between the DSTG, and I know we've got some people from Defence here, so thank you for this project, it's pretty cool. The University of Queensland, Boeing, and the US Air Force Research Labs. Now what's interesting about this is a great, amazing collaboration. Of course, it's all the purpose of being able to do flight. Imagine being able to go from London to Sydney or London to Brisbane in 2 hours. And to put that in context, the Concorde was 17 hours for the same distance. Now that's exciting, and we are going to learn a whole lot of things along the way. One of the things, of course, is how do you, if you're going to move people at Mark 8, and a device at Mark 8, how do you actually sustain the materials and the environment so they can survive that? 7,000 degrees of heat. Now, when I said about big, bold ambitions, yes, a scramjet, yes, Mark 8, but if we can learn about how do you withstand 7,000 degrees heat, think of all the other industries that will be spurred by that. Think about the bushfires in Australia and being able to sustain those. It's really, really exciting. But again, this is about necessity, this is about a big, bold goal, and again, underlying this is infrastructure and big data to actually make those things real. The final story I want to share is around CliniCloud. So who in the crowd remembers CliniCloud? Good. Would you like to come down and share the story with me? So the CliniCloud, 3 years ago, they were sitting in your seats. They were two Melbourne University students who wanted to learn to code, and they wanted to solve a big problem. So they participated in a competition that we been running for around 14 years around the world, called Imagine Cup, and they believed that they could use a smartphone to detect and do early diagnosis on pneumonia. They modified the stethoscope so it could be plugged into the phone, and they started collecting data on the breath. Now, the information and the big data that they needed terabytes, what they had to do to actually start thinking about commercialization. The first time that level of information has been updated since the 1850s. Incredible. 3 years ago. Now, it was just an idea, but they needed people who could help them understand how they're using Azure, they're building an app for iOS, Android, and Windows Phone. They had to have big data scientists. But the thing is, they had a big, bold goal. They sat in the room where you are today, and they rubbed shoulders with the people beside them, and they said, let's give it a go. And they were told they were practicing unsafe medicine. They have just received a $5 million investment from Best Buy in the US, an agreement to sell this device all throughout retail stores in the US. 3 years ago, they sat where you're sitting. Who knows what we'll learn as a result of them having this big, bold ambition? They've also been asked to adapt the stethoscope and the listening device that you see on the screen to monitor fetal heart rate during labor. Again, something that hasn't been able to be done at a level of detail before. So I asked you at the beginning of the session, I provoked you to think about what you need to do today, but also to think about, let your imaginations go wild. Spark those ideas, talk to the people beside you. Please, the person who can help you do something inventive, ingenious, innovative is probably right beside you when we're standing in the hall here today. So with that, I want you to have an amazing Ignite. I hope to see lots of smiling face, lots of taking advantage of all the resources that you have available to you. But to really kick off, I want to introduce our keynote speaker. Very excited about this gentleman who's joined us from Seattle. He has joined Microsoft in 2003, and since that time has been responsible for $4 billion businesses inside of Microsoft. Before that, he did 12 years at Novell. And I think the most interesting part of his career and his story is that he got a knockback when he first applied for a job with Novell. So he went and he spent hours reading manuals, learning about the products, and he came back and he got that job. And he was provided basically support for NetWare. And in fact, he was the man at midnight taking calls from around the world from people who were having problems. One man, NetWare, solving the issues of a global customer base. Now, he's pretty incredible from a Microsoft, what he does every day, but he's also the father of 5 beautiful children. And he spent the last couple of days here in Queensland enjoying the environment of Queensland, but now it's our turn to welcome him to the stage, and please welcome Brad Anderson.
So much. Thank you. Well, hey, good morning. It's great to be here. I don't know how to follow up after that introduction. What a great place. We have absolutely fallen in love with Australia. It's been a few years since I've been here, and it was the first time that we'd had a chance to go up to the reef. And, we're already planning on how we're going to get our 5 children back here and our 2 son-in-laws. I guess we'll bring them along as well. But I just love this place, and we're going to travel down to Sydney and spend a few days in Sydney meeting with customers over the next couple of days. But it's just an exciting time. And you know what? This has been an exciting time for Microsoft in Australia. Just last week, we opened up our first store, our first huge store outside of North America. And the response has been absolutely amazing for us. I don't know if anybody had a chance to see the details of this, but it was just amazing. The lines that were lined up, wanting to get their hands on a Surface Book or the Surface Pro 4. There were 2.5 million tweets sent that day with the Australian store's hashtag. Just an incredible amount of excitement. It was just amazing for us to see the adoption and just the excitement of the community. One of the most interesting things that you might want to hear about this is we actually donated over $4.8 million of technology and software to 11 nonprofit organizations in Australia on that one day alone. And for us, as we build out these stores, it's about the relationship that we want to have with the community. One other point you may find interesting, Microsoft employees as a group donate more than any other company in the world. In our history, the employees have donated over $1 billion to nonprofit organizations around the globe. And so we really think about the community and how we can help. Now let's talk a little bit about Microsoft, our vision, and our ambitions. Our mission is to empower every person and every organization in the planet to achieve more. That's what we strive to do. And we have 3 bold ambitions that we think as we deliver this, we can do that. First, we want to make personal computing more personal. You know, the devices that we work on should understand who we are, what we like to do, what our preferences are, and it should help us and guide us in our personal life and in our business life. We're going to reinvent business productivity. The world has fundamentally changed how we interact with each other, what we do in our personal lives, what we do in our business lives, that there's no longer a line between those, they blend. But we think it's time to really reinvent how productivity is done, and we're going to talk about what we're going to do in that space. And then we're building the intelligent cloud. The cloud is just this great enabler. It gives us opportunities to delight our customers like we've never been able to in the past, to get insights from data that we've never had in the past. It really, truly enables us to do things that we only imagined or dreamed about 2 or 3 years ago, let alone, Sarah was talking about 10 years ago. So these are our ambitions. We're going to talk about all those today. But in my view, there has never been a better time in history to be in IT, because IT is at the center of all of this. When organizations go through change, they look for the people who are going to stand up and lead. And case after case, if you look at industries that have gone through disruptions, it's the companies that are bold and who stand up and say, we're going to look at how we take advantage of this disruption to drive the business, that come out victorious. So my advice to you is stand up and be that leader in your organizations. All it takes to lead is doing. That's the first great principle of leadership, is being bold and being able to stand up and say, hey, I've got an idea, I've got a vision, come follow me. And that's what I think we are able to do together. And so we want to walk you through over the next hours the things that we're doing to help you be those leaders and be those heroes inside your organization. Now, a big part of what we're doing here is all around building the intelligent cloud. All the services that we're delivering are built on top of Azure. All the world's data is coming together in ways that we can now use it and put it together that drives insights like we've never done before. But the intelligent cloud is going to be the grand enabler. And I think we're going to look back in 5 years, in just 5 years, and say, I can't believe that's how we were doing things 5, 6, 7 years ago. But these 2 trends of cloud and mobility are the 2 trends that are working together, that are driving the business, that are driving innovation forward at a rate that we've never seen before. And so all the innovation that we are doing, the way we think about this is we do everything in the cloud. We're a cloud-first company. Then we bring that on-premises for you to also run in your data centers if that is where you need to run it. So it's all really about giving choice. Now, it's been remarkable to see what's happened just in Australia in the 1 year since we built our first Azure data center here in Australia. We were here a year ago and announced that we were going to have an Australian data center hosting the Azure and the Azure services. In that time period alone, here are some of the examples of the companies that are utilizing it, but we have seen a 4-fold increase in the number of organizations using our public cloud platform. 50% of all the enterprise organizations in Australia are now using Azure. And it's been interesting as we look at the actual revenue on Azure, 40% of all the revenue is actually coming from startups, small and medium-sized businesses, and ISVs. And so you see adoption of the biggest companies in Australia, and there are massive companies here, and you see adoption from the small startup born in the cloud organizations. But it has been an absolutely remarkable journey in just 1 year to see how much it's progressed. I thought it was fascinating as people were coming in and being asked, what are you here to learn about? It's about Azure, it's about the cloud, it's about Azure. That is so different than what the conversation was a year or 2 ago when the public cloud was just really getting into people's conversations. We definitely have hit that kink in the industry where the industry is saying, how do I now take advantage of this? Now, we're excited to introduce a couple of new partners into the Azure services as well. These 6 organizations have just joined what is called the Azure Cloud Provider. And so you get great organizations like Rackspace and what they do in terms of their fanatical support. I look at organizations like Buttonwood, who've got a phenomenal way of matching what a customer's needs are to the most efficient and most cost-effective cloud service that they could use. And then you've got organizations like Sauce Plaza, who I've worked with for years, who is the world's leader in helping organizations get up and running with Dynamics on top of Azure. So phenomenal partners here that can help you take advantage of these cloud services. We also are pleased to now that there are 2 local organizations here in Australia who have now added the Office 365 Express Route capabilities to their Express Route offerings. So you get that high-speed, dedicated, secure link into your environments, and that all the Office 365 traffic can flow through. So we're super happy to have both Megaport and NextDC join us as we help all of us journey towards the cloud. Now these words, trustworthy, flexible, integrated, these are attributes that all of you as IT professionals look to have in everything that you do in your environments. Everything that you do has to be secure. It has to have the flexibility to be able to adjust to the business needs on demand. It needs to be integrated because you can't have these islands that are living by their own. Things have got to be more and more integrated. These are attributes that you aspire to have in everything you do, but they're even more important as you think about who your public cloud and cloud partner is going to be. Because you need these capabilities in a world where there are constant and evolving and more serious threats every day, where you never know what the business is going to need next month or 6 months from right now. You need to have these capabilities. And of course, it all has got to be intelligent. And as we think about the cloud, and as we think about what we can do together, it really is about how we drive agility and how we drive differentiation as an industry like we've never had before. It's less about the cost. It's less about the cost savings that you can get as you move to the cloud, but it's more about what you can do once you start to understand and utilize what the cloud can do for you. So let's walk into each one of these one by one now and spend some time talking about what we're doing in each of the areas. And let's start with trustworthy. Security is far and away the #1 concern of every organization in the world. It is a boardroom conversation. It seems like just about every day we read about an organization who's had a security breach. It has become so common that organizations, are struggling with how they address these attacks. And it's really fascinating. If you take a look at what the root cause is, 75% of the time when we get to the root cause of what these security attacks were, it comes down to weak or compromised user credentials. We're going to talk about identity a lot this morning. Identity is the key to enterprise mobility, but it also is the primary attack vector that all of these attacks come through. And so we have to live in a world where we are strong in what we do, but at the same time we assume that we have been breached because these attacks are continuing to evolve. If you take a look at the history, you go back 15 years ago when these attacks first started, it was individuals trying to make a name for themselves. They were basically just trying to create mischief. Then it evolved into organized crime trying to create profit. Over the last couple of years, it now has become state nations who are conducting terrorism. It's very organized, it's very, very sophisticated. And one thing that we know for sure is that these attacks are going to become more vicious, they're going to become more sophisticated, and they're going to become more and more common. It's just a way of life as we move forward. And so with that in mind, we've done work with how we think about this. Now put this in the context of our users. Our users no longer work on one device behind the firewall. They're using more devices, utilizing more applications, interacting and collaborating with more people. And one of the most fascinating things about this trend is that corporate data and the corporate applications are no longer safely behind the firewall. Much of the data is now moved into the cloud in SaaS apps and in apps that are being hosted around the globe. So fundamentally, the perimeter that we've always based our security on as an industry has evaporated. And we have to think about what security means in a whole different light than we ever have before. Because what the reality is a compromise anywhere in the system could compromise the entire system. You know, it's really interesting. We've had a chance to get very close with a number of these customers that have been breached. And you know, some of the most known ones that you guys have read about, when you eventually track it down, one of them was a supplier who was working on the heating system in the company. Their account was compromised, and it led to compromising all the cash registers in a particular company. That's how these attacks work. Now, what we have to do as an industry is you have to figure out how we're going to balance empowerment with security and protection. And as IT professionals, this is what we do every day. Our job is to deliver to our users, our employees, our customers, the most incredible working experience that we could give to them. We want to delight them. We want them to be productive. We want them to be efficient. We want them to be agile. But how do we do that in a way that also ensures security and protection? As IT professionals, we have responsibilities to our users. We also have responsibilities to the corporation in terms of compliance, security, reliability, and protection. And I believe as an industry, we've not got this balance right. All too often, we've delivered a poor experience to our users, and then we've hid behind the word security. It's secure, but it's unusable. And so what we have really worked hard on, that I hope you see as we go through this morning's demos, is how we have taken these concepts of empowerment and protection and then built them natively into the user experiences to guide users as they're getting their work done. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about some of the products we're going to talk about today, okay, and some of the things that we've done. First of all, Windows 10. What a phenomenal early success in the market. More than 115 million Windows 10 devices being used around the globe right now. The amount of energy around Windows 10 is phenomenal. It's fantastic when I get in a cab somewhere and I'm talking to the cab driver and I mention I'm from Microsoft, and they start talking to me about how they got a laptop. It was Windows 10. They love it. It is just so enriching right now to hear people coming to me and saying, man, I love Windows 10. I love what you have done. As we built Windows 10, we had the enterprise in mind. We have built things in Windows 10 like Device Guard, like the next-gen credentials, where you can actually get away from using passwords. You can lock down a device and actually lock it down to understand what software can run on that and what cannot run on it. But we have built Windows 10 with the modern security attacks in mind. We're delivering Windows as a service, and for many of you, that may not have sunk in what that means. You're going to have to fundamentally change how you manage Windows, because we're going to be delivering new value every couple of months down to you on top of your Windows platforms. Your users are going to constantly be getting new capabilities. But what that means is continual innovation is going to be coming down. You're going to continually be able to get new capability and make your users better. Things like enhanced productivity. We're building things natively in the operating system that's never been done before. As you see some of the enterprise data protection capabilities coming out that are natively a part of Windows, where you have these concepts of containers natively built in the operating system, it's just so easy for us to guide the user on how to protect and use the company data while keeping it separate from anything that is personal on the device. And then finally, I think we just really have done a great job in some of these innovative devices. I can remember the first time I saw Surface Book. It was in March of this year. And it was just mind-blowing, the design on that. It was just so exciting to walk away from that meeting when we saw what that was going to be. It's so exciting to actually have a phone and be able to take my phone and dock it, and I get a full desktop experience on multiple monitors. I hope you get a chance to see this at the conference. It just makes your life so much easier because you can travel and you can be productive even on the smallest device in the world with the innovation that we have done. An interesting data point here for you. One of the teams that I run at Microsoft is the System Center Configuration Manager team. I was actually looking at the telemetry over the weekend, and over 70% of all of the config manager organizations that are reporting back telemetry have already deployed Windows 10 devices and managing that through config manager. Over 70%. Remember, config manager manages about 70% of the world's PCs. And so we see organizations around the globe really embracing Windows 10. Let me talk to you a little bit about what we see with Office. With Office, we see the world changing in how it works. There is a shift going on. There is a change going on that's being driven by the cloud, by mobile devices, and by just the mentality of the millennials coming into the workforce. And so we had an old way of doing things, and we're going to be moving to a new way of doing things. Let me describe some of that for you. Customers are no longer passive consumers of our products and services. They're now an active part of everything that all of us do. Our users, our consumers, in every one of your organizations is going to become an active part of your development process, giving you real-time feedback, and in many ways, they become your brand ambassadors. Think about what happens on Twitter if you have a product or a service that has a hashtag fail associated with it, how powerful and how damaging that can be. Your customers now actually help you or hurt you from a brand recognition depending on how much you delight them. You take a look at things like we're no longer working in these static hierarchies that were really designed in the industrial age when the whole industrial revolution happened. We built organizations that were all built to scale with management and control. Now individuals get together quickly, they network quickly, they accomplish a goal, they get after an opportunity, they solve a problem, then they disperse and they go on to the next one. So moving from these static hierarchies to these dynamic networks has to be a part of everything that we do. It used to be that organizations and individuals would hoard data. Data would get trapped inside of our hierarchies in our companies. It still does. It's really unfortunate that it happens. And so what we've got to do is figure out ways that we can help take the data in the company, make it available to everybody in the company, and then drive insights, drive action with that data being put in everybody's hands. We have to move into a model where the tools all around us enable us to see all the data possible that I need as an individual. It understands who I am and what I need. I get all that, and I can be productive. We have to move away from this siloed productivity, where it really is kind of like I focus on me being productive to we being productive. And then finally, at the bottom here, security just cannot be thought about as a data center thing where you put a perimeter around the data center. Security has to be natively built in to every app, to every operating system, to every transaction, to everything that we do. Because you never know on what device the transaction is going to be happening, the data is going to be accessing, where in the world the user is. And so we have to move to where security is not a perimeter-based solution in the data center, but is natively built in, and what we call is in the boardroom. It's a native part of the actions that every individual does. And so we've been taking these particular views and what we see happening, and we bring this all together. We say, okay, we've got to build Office, we've got to build all of our tools in a way that's built to drive insights for individuals and organizations. It allows us to allow these dynamic networks to rapidly form, be productive, and then disperse and go on to the next project. These are the kind of things that as we think about this change and how we are going to reinvent productivity and business process, these are the things that we're focused on. Now, let me talk to you about how some of this comes together. The most common conversation that I have right now with you and with the senior leaders in companies is individuals come in and say, Brad, we're trying to really embrace enterprise mobility. We've deployed point products over the last 2 or 3 years to address specific needs. Like maybe we have an MDM solution, maybe we've got an identity solution, but we've progressed, the industry's progressed. What does a modern architecture look like for enabling enterprise mobility? Well, this is the modern architecture for doing that. So first of all, your users have devices, and your users should have the option to choose any device they want to work on. It's a very personal decision. Some may like Windows, some may like iOS, some may like Android. But you want to enable your users to choose the device they want to be productive on, because you want to remove any barrier, you want to remove any kind of friction. And these devices become intensely personal. But in a world where these things are no longer behind the perimeter and the perimeter is evaporated, what becomes the new perimeter? I would submit that identity is the new perimeter. Identity is the one thing that is common across any device that your user wants to use. So the way that this modern architecture works is a user goes up to any device, they authenticate, identify himself or herself, authenticate to the cloud, to Azure Active Directory, and then they're delivered everything they need to be productive. But identity is the foundation. It is the one piece that is common across any device, any operating system. Then we build our applications like Office 365 and working with our partners to where the applications integrate with the identity store. And then we bring the Enterprise Mobility Suite on top of that, and that's how you manage the apps, the data, the identity, and the devices. So if you're asking the question, what is Microsoft's modern platform, or what's Microsoft's architecture for enabling enterprise mobility, you're looking at it right here on the screen. Device of choice, with identity being managed by Azure Active Directory, applications integrating into Azure Active Directory, then everything managed by EMS. Now, we also connect this to your on-premises, because we know you're all coming from an on-premises viewpoint. So we've connected AAD with AD. We've connected EMS with Config Manager, and we give you these great integrated solutions that allow you to embrace what the future is going to be, but do it with where you're starting at today. Okay, I hope this makes sense. What I am seeing right now, and again, this is the number one conversation that I will have over the next 2 days as I meet with, about 3 million companies that account for about 3 million users, is everyone's going to want to talk about how do I really enable enterprise mobility? What's the best way to do it? And how do I give my users that empowering work environment while also protecting the organization's assets? And this is how we do it. Now, as a part of this is the concept of protection. And so here's what I would encourage you to think about. You have to protect on as many devices or as many layers as you can. We believe in a defense in depth approach. So you want to make sure that you protect at the device level. This is MDM. You want to protect at the application layer. This is MAM. You have to be able to protect at the data layer. And we actually believe that data should become self-protecting. I'm going to show you what that means here in a minute. And then you need to wrap all of that with strong identity management. So 4 layers of protection on your users' devices: device, app, data, and identity. This is what we've delivered with the Enterprise Mobility Suite. The Enterprise Mobility Suite is the fastest growing product in Microsoft's history, okay? Which is saying something. That is an incredible feat that this product has had. And the reason that there has been so much interest in it is because it offers a set of capabilities in an integrated way that have never been seen before, okay? And so what I thought the best thing to do here would be is actually just to go and give you a view of it. So with that, let me go over here. I'm actually going to give you a view of it. Actually, you know what? I wanted to give you one other thing before that. Some fascinating research has just been published by the Australian Signals Directorate. They published that in 85% of the cases where they've been called in to do some research and to help customers understand how they were attacked and what the cyber attack, what the root cause was, they have found that in 85% of those cases, if the customer had done just the 4 most common recommendations around security and protection, they could have been prevented. Okay, those 4 things are: 1, whitelisting applications on the device; 2, keep your operating system patched; 3, keep your applications patched; and 4, control who has administrative access across the environment. 85% of the attacks could have been solved, could have been addressed, could have been prevented had they been doing that. Okay. Now, before we actually get into a demo of this, what I thought you might find interesting is to actually see how one particular organization is using this. Okay, so let's actually take a look at here about how Western Australia's Department of Sport and Recreation is using the Enterprise Mobility Suite and Office 365.
Western Australian Sports and Recreation look after the stadiums and events areas of sporting in Western Australia.
The Microsoft Cloud services allow it to be flexible and scalable to the level that we require as an agency. We started working with the Microsoft Azure Cloud Technologies when we were looking to take advantage of the Office 365 licenses included in our enterprise agreement. We wanted to ensure that we had a stable environment for the authentication and single sign-ons. With our regional and remote staff members supporting the community across the state, they've got mobile access to our now centralised data and services through the WAN connected to the express route straight into the cloud.
Okay, so with that, let's take a look at some of the technology here. So what I'm going to walk you through here is a bunch of the integration now that we've done across Office 365 and the various components of the Enterprise Mobility Suite. Okay, so I'm going to start here on an iPad. So first of all, let me ask a question. How many of you today in your companies exchange email in Outlook with RMS-protected email? At Microsoft, it seems like every day I send somebody an RMS-protected email, as that's one of our primary ways that we protect data. But if you've ever tried to open up an RMS-protected email on an iOS or an Android device, you've not been able to open it until now. So what you're looking at here is an updated version of Word, and I'm going to go ahead and open that up. This is now RMS-protected. And so I've just received an RMS-protected email, the most common way that organizations today protect their corporate data. And what you're going to see here is it's now going to come up, it's going to open that, it's going to render that for me, and I can actually, for the first time now, view RMS-protected documents on my iOS devices and on my Android devices. And you take a look here, the rights are all in place. I can see what rights I have. Coming soon, you'll be able to author the RMS-protected documents natively on iOS and Android in addition to Windows. But for the first time, one of the principal and one of the most foundational ways that organizations protect their corporate data using RMS is now supported on the various platforms. Now, let me show you something that's really intriguing about what the Enterprise Mobility Suite does. Anytime anybody opens an RMS-protected document anywhere in the world, it sends telemetry back to our service. So we bring back information, who the user is, where they are, the time of the day, the device they're working on, and then we're able to put that data to work on your behalf. So you're looking at an email that any user that sends out an RMS-protected document receives when anybody opens up that document. If I click on this link here, what it's going to do now, it's going to take me into this site that allows me to actually see how the document is being used and who's been accessing it. And so again, this is an example of where we're able to take the telemetry that comes back to our service and put it to work on your behalf. And one of the things that you'll see time and time again as you get to know more about how these cloud services to work is that telemetry is able to do things for you that you've never been able to do in the past. So here I can see that 40 times this particular document that I've shared has been accessed and been opened appropriately. But interesting, there's 9 times where this individual's been trying to open up a document that didn't have rights to open the document. Now, of course, the document is not open. We protected the content, but I find it super interesting that I can actually see telemetry now of how the document's been being used. I can get a list view of this, and it'll show me, for example, the time, the date when these things were opened. I can get a map view of this, and it'll actually show me where in the world people are viewing this particular document. Okay? Green is a successful open, and the orange is an unsuccessful open. I can actually drill down into this. And I've heard that there's something, kind of a little bit frightening about Bankstown. But I can actually see here that this individual, Brian, in Bankstown, has somehow got a hold of this document and is trying to open it. Of course, we blocked it. But I can now see in this most confidential, most sensitive information how it's being used. And if any time I need to revoke access, it's a simple thing that we can do. This is one of the components of the Enterprise Mobility Suite. It allows us to protect data by making the data self-protecting. The way it works is the file actually contains the list of who has rights to open the file and what rights they have, and then that travels with the file. So think of this scenario where somebody accidentally emails a file to someone that shouldn't have it. Hey, it doesn't matter, because the file knows who can open it. Or maybe an individual leaves an organization, takes a bunch of data with them. That doesn't matter anymore, because as soon as you disable their access in Azure Active Directory, they can no longer open the documents that they copied onto a thumb drive and walked out of the door with. So data protection at the data level, a unique value of the Enterprise Mobility Suite. Now, I'm going to go into Outlook here for a minute. I don't know if any of you have had a chance to use the new Outlook on iOS or on Android, but it's being used now on 30 million devices. Actually, let's go into Word. Let me go into Word for a minute. I'm going to walk you through some of the scenarios now that we've built hand in hand across the Enterprise Mobility Suite and Office 365. And what we have tried to do here is tried to lead and guide the user on how to use corporate information appropriately. And we do it all based on identity. So you can see here, I have data stores on OneDrive for business, OneDrive, and Dropbox. Now, what I want you to know is, look underneath there. It lists each one of the user accounts that's being used. So you can see there, by OneDrive, I've authenticated with a corporate identity, but then for OneDrive Personal and Dropbox, I've authenticated with a personal identity. What we have built now is when a user goes and opens up a document from a corporate location that is protected by their corporate identity, we will open that document using data loss prevention policies. But using the same application, if a user goes and opens up a document from a place that is protected by their personal identity, we'll open it, we'll stay out of it. We will not apply any policy to it. So what we're trying to do here is help users who use our application, their personal life and their business life, to be able to manage and protect their corporate data. Does that make sense? Okay, so now I've got this business plan, and let's say that I want to go do things like I want to go save it to a non-approved location. So what I'll do here, when this comes back to me, is I'm going to go try to save it into Dropbox. But what we have done is we've applied data loss prevention policies that basically manage where the user can save corporate documents to. When I go try to save that into a non-approved location, it just comes back and says, hey, you're not allowed to do that. This right here is one of the #1 requests we have from every organization around the world, is my users are working on their personal devices. I want to be able to manage where they can save corporate documents to. We've now built this into all the Office mobile applications, and actually tomorrow we'll be announcing a number of partners that have now integrated into their solution as well. Let me go back. Now let's go and do kind of a typical operation that's empowering for users. I'm going to go ahead and select everything, and I'm going to put it onto the clipboard. I'm going to copy it. So one of the things that I expect as a user is I expect to be able to use corporate data inside of corporate applications. So I'm going to go to Outlook, and I'm going to go and create an email, and I want to be able to paste that information into that email. I want to be able to reuse it. Okay, and it works, just like you would expect. That's empowering to me as a user. But with the data loss prevention policies we have, let's say that I'm now going to do the exact same thing, but I'm going to create that email from my personal email account. When I go to paste, paste doesn't appear. It's the same app. It understands what is personal content, what is corporate content, and it guides the user to use the corporate content appropriately. Okay? That is some of the value that you get with the Enterprise Mobility Suite. Now, just to kind of show you a couple of things here. One thing I wanted to point out, you see that browser? That's a managed browser. So that actually, on the case of an iPad, it's Safari that's been wrapped with our SDK and wrapper so that all the corporate content accessed in that browser is kept separate from personal browsing. Now, if I just go to Twitter here, for example, so I'm now in a personal application, I go and create a tweet. When I go to paste, look what happens. The paste option just doesn't appear to me. So again, keeping my corporate content and data separate from anything personal, and then guiding the user on how to use that. Now, one of the most common things that we hear from organizations right now is that they say, listen, we want to take advantage of the cloud to deliver the Windows apps that our users have to all their devices. And so what you're looking at here is a new solution that we put out a couple of months ago called Azure Remote App. So the way to think about this is this remote desktop services rewritten as a cloud service running in Azure. I'm going to go ahead and click on Visio here. And so what's happening by clicking on Visio is it's spinning up a VM in one of the Azure data centers. It's able to identify where I'm at in the world, and it goes to the closest Azure data center, spins up a VM, and then it's going to bring up Visio, and I will be running Visio on my iPad. So I can now deliver any Windows application to any Windows device, iOS or Android, through Azure Remote Services or Azure Remote App. And right now, you can actually use this for as low as $2 per user per month. You cannot build out a VDI remote app infrastructure for $2 per user per month. A great example of using the benefits of the cloud to give you agility and power your users. Now let's transition over and talk a little bit about identity, okay, the other component of the Enterprise Mobility Suite. We talked about the fact that most of you have got users using SaaS applications. But if I were to ask any of you, how many SaaS apps are in use at your company? How many of you would be able to respond with a correct answer? Well, one of the things that we've built in the Enterprise Mobility Suite is we've built a solution that goes out, collects logs, and then brings back and gives you a view of all the SaaS apps, the cloud apps that are being used by your company. Then we allow you to bring them under management. So what you're looking at here is the administrative console. And I want to point out here, see that number right there? We have now integrated 2,523 apps that we can now manage through the Enterprise Mobility Suite. I had to put my glasses on because last night that number was 2,519. So we've added 4 apps in the last couple of hours. What do I mean by being able to manage applications? Well, let me show you. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go bring Dropbox under management. So think for a minute about how you've used Active Directory for the last 10 or 15 years. Azure Active Directory, let's see, did I spell it wrong? Yeah, 1X. Active Directory has been your authoritative source for identity for years. And it also gives that single sign-on experience to all your users as they go to different servers and use different applications. Well, we've built that moral equivalent now in the cloud. So what we have done here is we've now allowed you to bring SaaS apps under management. I can configure them for single sign-on. The user comes in, authenticates one time in the morning, they go to use other applications, they're automatically signed on. I can do automated user provisioning. A new employee gets hired at the company, they can automatically be provisioned in your SaaS apps. Maybe more importantly, if an individual leaves your organization, we can make sure that they're also deprovisioned or deactivated in the SaaS apps that they're using as a part of your company. But you can now bring your SaaS apps under management just like you manage your native apps. Now, one of the great things about this is anytime anybody authenticates to Azure Active Directory, and when you're managing your application like this, that's an authentication against Azure Active Directory. We bring back telemetry. We bring back telemetry every week for more than 5 billion authentications to Azure Active Directory. If any of you are using Office 365, which I'm sure many of you are, anytime your users go to access Office 365, that's an authentication against Azure Active Directory, and we bring telemetry back. Well, now what we're doing is we're taking all that data that comes back and we're combining with other data sets from across Microsoft, putting it into the machine learning engine of Azure, and now delivering you details and reports and value you've never seen before. So let me give you a couple of examples. These are the reports that you get when you are a user of the Enterprise Mobility Suite. I can take a look here at a report called Sign-ins from Multiple Geographies. And what this is doing is it's showing me a report where a user logged in 2 physical locations in a time frame that's impossible. So I can look at Jennifer, logged in New York, and then 4 hours and 33 minutes later, logged in Bangkok. Okay, unless she's figured out some kind of time travel or some kind of space travel that we don't know about, that's impossible. That's a compromised user account. So what can you do? Well, you can come in here, you can reset the password, you can challenge the user with a multi-factor authentication, but for the first time, you can actually see these compromised user accounts and block them. I can dig in a little deeper here. Users with anomalous sign-in activity. I go into this, it's going to give me all the users in my organization that our machine learning and our intelligent cloud has identified problems with and is encouraging you to go look at them. So let's walk through these details. First of all, there's the Jennifer that signed in from multiple geographies. Signed in from a possibly infected device. What this is this has combined all the data that we also get back from all of our anti-malware efforts. And so we have seen that Jennifer is working on a device that is communicating with a known address that is infected. And so we believe that Jennifer's device is also infected. And then the one above that, Jennifer signed on from a hidden IP address. There's no reason why a user would ever sign in, one of our employees would ever sign in from one of those addresses. So here we're giving you views from all the telemetry that comes into us of user accounts that have been compromised or likely are compromised for you to take action on. This has been a phenomenal set of capabilities. I mean, there are millions of corporate identities that are being protected with this. And when people see this, they always have the same question. They say, hey, I need that for my on-premises identities as well. What can you do for my Active Directory? So I'm going to show you now the 4th component of the Enterprise Mobility Suite. It's called Advanced Threat Analytics. This is a really hot startup that we purchased a year ago in Israel. And what they do is very similar to what we do in the cloud. They use machine learning on premises in your company, in your environment, to create a standard or a norm of working behavior of every individual in the company. And then using that machine learning, if it sees anything that deviates from the norm, it'll flag it to your attention. We are also constantly feeding into it signal and fingerprints that say, here's what an attack looks like. If you see these things, bring that to the attention of the company because there's probably an attack going on. So let's walk through the details of what you can see here. So the first thing that you see here is at 7:47, there was what's called a reconnaissance attack going on. So what this is somebody is trying to identify and guess usernames. So there were 105 guess attempts, and it looks like it was able to identify a couple of accounts like Michael, Administrator, and Iden. Okay, so that was at 7:47 where someone came in and was able to successfully identify these accounts. If I move up a little bit here, it's just like a social media feed. 5 minutes later, it looks like this attacker also was able to identify Michael's password. 450 guess attempts, and they were able to successfully guess the password. That was at 7:52. 2 minutes later, we see that user account, now Michael, is accessing resources from abnormal devices, and I can actually see the names of the devices that are being used to access. And Michael is also accessing resources, servers, other people's devices that he normally doesn't access. This is the machine learning capability saying, we see something is going on here. Okay, go up. A minute later, this is called a pass the ticket attack. This is a very common attack that happens where once you've compromised one user account, you're trying to compromise more. And then you scroll up a little bit later, 5 minutes later, or a couple minutes later, there's now an account trying to remotely execute code on one of your domain controllers. Real-time data being fed to you of an attack that's happening using machine learning, using learning that's come from the cloud. That's what the Enterprise Mobility Suite delivers to you in conjunction with Office 365 and the assets across the company. So I talk about trustworthy. These are the things that we're doing that deliver you trustworthy solutions that empower your users to be productive in a very empowering environment, but still keep the data secure and keep the data safe. That is one of the examples of what we are doing from a perspective of helping you be trustworthy in terms of you use services from our cloud. Now let's talk about flexible for a minute. And we talk about flexibility, it's really about choice. Every organization wants to have the ability to be able to react and do what the business needs. You want to have choice. You don't want to be locked in. But one of the interesting things that we see is right now, 40% of all of the IT spend that happens in companies is now actually happening outside of IT. The most common scenario that we see is you've got lines of business that are just going out and purchasing SaaS apps, shadow IT, and you have IT spend now happening outside of the organization. The reality is that most organizations today are already hybrid. You're using SaaS apps, you're using hosted capacity, you've got capacity in your data centers. So the reality is that as we move forward, every organization is likely going to be in a model where they're going to have capacity that are being used in their data center. They're going to be using an increasingly number of new SaaS apps, capacity from Azure, from Rackspace, from Amazon, from Google, but you're going to be in a multi-cloud environment. Now, as we think about this as an architecture. And we literally think about this as, our cloud should act as the edge of our customer servers. Your server should act as the edge of our cloud. So from a design principle and from an architecture, our engineers think through what can we do that really takes advantage of the fact that our customers are going to be running in a hybrid model. How can we architect our solutions that really brings out new capabilities, new value that was never possible before because customers are in a hybrid environment? Now, this is a place where architecture really matters. There are some places where you will be making decisions on your future of your company and the future architectures, and this is one of the ones I would encourage you to really think deeply about because architecture really, really matters in this space. Now, with Azure, we're constantly learning. It is the most incredible learning experience I have ever been a part of. To give you an idea of the scale of this, we have more than 1 million servers in our cloud, 500 million users authenticated regularly, active users, 1.25 million instances of SQL running inside of the cloud. The rate at which we are deploying new capabilities and new capacity is mind-blowing. Just in the last 2 weeks, we just announced we've opened up 3 data centers in India. We announced new data centers in the UK and in Germany. And we believe that as time goes on, the rules around data sovereignty and the regulations that all of us are going to be beholden to is going to require you to have a public cloud provider that has got a global footprint and can guarantee that your data stays within your country or within, for example, the European Union. It's one of the reasons why we've been investing so heavily in Azure. We spend over $5 billion every year in building out our public cloud. But here's where we are significantly different from anybody else in the market and why it matters to you. We are the only public cloud provider operating at this kind of hyperscale that takes everything that we learn from this kind of scale and then deliver it for you to use also in your data centers. And this is why I say architecture matters. Our vision, our strategy has always been to have consistent clouds across our clouds, your clouds, and service provider clouds. And so what that provides is the ability for you to be able to have capabilities and scenarios that you never had before. So let me walk you through a few of these. I'm going to walk you through some of the things that have been enabled now because of this architecture of cloud consistency. And let's start with the next version of SQL Server, SQL Server 2016. SQL has benefited incredibly from the scale and the learning of Azure. 1.25 million instances of SQL are running in Azure right now, and it grows exponentially every day. So that kind of unlimited scale, the security, all the protection that we have to build into a multi-tenant cloud database, we deliver through SQL for you to run on premises. All the analytics, all the things that we're pulling out of the public cloud for you, and that's how we give you all that telemetry, we are also exposing down through SQL with your on-premises directory. Now, let me give you an incredible scenario here that is unique to Microsoft because of this architecture. And I'll bet that most of you have a scenario that fits this one. You probably have some kind of an application. In that application, you've got tables. You've probably got tables that have, for example, your customers, your products that you sell, and then an order history. But what happens with that order history table is it gets very big, it gets very long, it gets very dated. And then what happens is often your queries will slow down a little bit, so you can't react as quickly as you would want to the business. Well, because the bits that run in your data center with SQL Server are the exact same bits that run in our data center with Azure, we now have the ability to have a single table span multiple clouds. So you can actually go out and identify what data is cold and then we call it stretch that cold data up into Azure. So we can take all of that history that is so rarely accessed, stretch it up into Azure. It's now stored up in Azure. It's backed up in multiple locations, so you have fault tolerance. If a query even ever has to come in, boy, we can feed it really quick, but you can do this without having to modify your app in any way, shape, or form. So the new version of SQL Server, this is one of these examples of, because our architecture and our strategy has always been to have the same bits running in your data center that run in ours, we can deliver you capabilities like this, where you get this bottomless data center. You get all the agility and you get all the capabilities of the public cloud for this table. Interesting side effect you may not realize on this, but if you ever lose your on-premises server and have to restore it, you have to restore a small fraction because all the data in the cloud stays in the cloud. So even your largest databases in the world can now be restored in minutes. But it's possible because of our strategy of having a consistent set of cloud capabilities. Now, one of the local organizations here is Lang O'Rourke, who's been making some amazing innovations with how they're using our data capabilities in Azure. So using things like Power BI and the capabilities that we deliver inside of Azure for making sense of data, they're coming up with some incredible solutions. You're going to hear about it here, but you're also going to hear about it a little bit more tomorrow. So let's listen to what they have to say about how they're using the data capabilities of Azure.
Lang O'Rourke would like to deliver the best technology to our staff working remotely all over the world. Cloud to us is a way of leveraging smarts from Microsoft, utilizing Azure to give us the capability that we don't have in-house. It gives us access to people and their technology without us having to invest in it. A combination of Microsoft Azure and Internet of Things gives us the capability of putting smarts where we typically would have to put people. This takes people out of harm's way, and we're leveraging on technology to give us information and data. Microsoft Power BI gives us the ability to analyze trends. It will tell us in real time when a specific trend is happening so that we can take action against it, rather than having to analyze the data after the fact.
If you haven't had a chance to use Power BI, I would just really encourage you to make sure you attend a session this week on Power BI. So leveraging the tool that most individuals who work in data use in Excel, you can now have these incredible visualizations that help these users make sense of the data. I think one of the most fun things that I get to do in my job is I just get to wallow in data. I love numbers. I'm a numbers guy. And with Power BI, we will just sit in a room and we'll just look at the telemetry coming back on Intune. We'll look at the telemetry coming back on Config Manager. And we're able to identify things because we're able to visualize and see that data in new ways we've never had before. And that's what this organization has been doing, and they're doing that from Azure. Now let's talk a little bit more about Azure and talk about the infrastructure. If I were to really simplify what Azure is for you, I would talk to you about three components. First of all, there's all the infrastructure. There's the data centers, the servers, the networking, the storage. All the things that we build out. Then there's a set of higher level services like VMs, like databases, like IaaS, like PaaS, and these are the building blocks that developers build on. And then there's the apps that all of you build on top of Azure. Okay, this is a massive simplification of Azure, but you can think about it in these three segments, if you will. Now, a couple of years ago, we announced what we called the Azure Pack. And what the Azure Pack was we delivered those top two set of capabilities to customers, so you had a consistent set of IaaS capabilities in your private cloud as what we have in the public cloud. Okay, and people have loved it, but they said, listen, we need a little bit more. We want to be able to write these born-in-the-cloud PaaS applications, these modern cloud apps, and we don't want to be locked into only being able to run those in Azure. We want to be able to write these new modern apps and have that flexibility to be able to deploy that where, when, and how we want. So what we're bringing to market now is what we call the Azure Stack, and this literally is the entire Azure Stack now running in your data centers. The same network controller that we built for Azure will be a part of the next version of Windows Server. The high volume, low cost storage that everything in Azure runs on is being built into the next version of Windows Server. The same architecture, the model of the applications that developers build for Azure can be applied on the next version of Windows Server and deployed into your environments without any modification. So this is a build once, run anywhere kind of environment. And just to contrast this, I want to make sure you understand how important this is. You're not locked in to only being able to run that cloud app that you've built using the cloud APIs from Azure. You're not locked into Azure. You can run that in your data centers. You can run that in a service provider's data centers who's also hosting using Windows Server and the Azure stack. The comparison of that, if you build a modern application on Amazon or Google's cloud and you take advantage of their cloud APIs, it will only run on Amazon's web. It'll only run on Google. You will not be able to take that app and move it to another place, so you're locked in. It's where our strategy is so different and why architecture matters so much. Now, the Azure Stack, it gives you this consistent set of capabilities, consistent set of APIs. One model for developers to build applications that can then be deployed in our cloud or your cloud. You get all the benefits of the hyperscale cloud capabilities, all of that cloud-inspired hardware. In fact, we've gone as far as we've released something we call the cloud, I just went blank, the cloud platform. And what the cloud platform is it literally is a rack that you can purchase which mirrors the racks that we deploy in Azure around the globe. And you can host thousands of VMs on that single rack. It comes pre-configured, it comes pre-built. You get it, you put in the power, you put in the networking, and it comes up and you've got a very large private cloud, all optimized, all built along the same things that we do with Azure. So we're bringing Azure to your data centers. Now, we're also making significant changes in the next version of Windows Server and System Center with this as well. And so, the new versions of Windows Server 2016 and System Center 2016 are in preview right now. We've taken everything that we've built inside of Azure for these modern microservices applications built with containers, this modern way where we can actually build these applications and rapidly deploy them on nano servers, on servers that are very, very small. All that is being built into the next version of Windows Server and System Center, so these modern apps built with this microservices architecture, again, using containers, can all be hosted and used on-premise just like it can be in the cloud. So it's all about flexibility, and it's all about choice. Now let's transition. Let's talk a little bit about integrated. Now, let me paint a picture here for a minute. Many of you have probably got a scenario that looks like this. If you ask executives, if you ask leaders in most companies, 74% of the time they'll say that hybrid cloud they believe is fundamental to their future, to their ability to drive profit and their ability to drive differentiation. What that means to all of us in this room is we have to enable our organizations to deploy any app on any operating system on any cloud. And then you have to be able to manage all that. So many organizations look like this. You start with a private cloud. You've got physical servers and then virtual servers in that cloud. Maybe those virtual servers are running in VMware or in Hyper-V. You're adding capacity from Azure. That may be Windows, that may be Linux. You're also adding capacity from other partners, Rackspace, Amazon, Google. This is the environment that most of you are going to be living in for many, many years into the future. Well, what you need is a way to manage all that. You want to be able to manage any app on any operating system in any cloud. This is a brand new offer from Microsoft called the Operations Management Suite. Kind of conceptually, you think about this is System Center running in the cloud. Okay, this has been built by the System Center organization. It integrates deeply with the System Center on premises and extends out the System Center capabilities that most of you already use in your data centers today to be able to manage any app on any operating system on any cloud. So what do you get with the Operations Management Suite? Well, you get things like automation, backup, disaster recovery, log analytics, views into the security posture, logs into your patching, or views into your patching. And you get that independent of the operating system on any application on any cloud. And then because it integrates with your on-premises System Center, you get the kind of views, you get the kind of integration for your public cloud, service provider cloud, and private cloud all coming together in one place. Okay? What I thought you'd like to see is probably like to get a view of how this looks. So if I can go over here, I'm going to transition over here and give you a view of what this looks like right now. So what you're looking at here is a dashboard. This is the OMS dashboard when it comes up here. Okay, this is the OMS dashboard. So the first thing that I want to point out is every one of these tiles is a solution that can be customized, that can be acquired. So let me kind of walk you through and show you a couple of the pieces here. So I have things like an AD assessment, malware assessment, backup, capacity planning. I have a rich set of capabilities, and I can have my own custom view. This is all HTML5, meaning I can access this from any browser. We've also released native apps of this for Windows, iOS, and Android. Now, we have this concept of a gallery. So I can come into a gallery. And in the gallery, this is where I can go and acquire new solutions. And so this is where you'll see this gallery constantly being added to. Like you take a look right here that says containers coming soon. There's going to be a solution, a tile here that you'll be able to use specific to containers. Now, I'm going to come and look at this SQL one. So, an interesting data point you may not know, half of all the servers, or half of all the workloads that run on Windows Server around the globe are either database or web. So this will be one of the most commonly used solutions in the Operations Management Suite. I already own this, so I'm going to go view it. So what this is now doing is this is bringing telemetry back to Microsoft, and it's marrying that telemetry with our learnings and our experience that we're getting inside of Azure and from around the globe from our engineering teams. And then we're going to present this to you in a way that allows you to see what recommendations we would make for you. So in terms of security and compliance, availability and business continuity, performance, we're going to start giving you recommendations. I can click on this performance and scalability, and there are 2 high prioritized actions it's recommending that I take here. And you can see there's a weighting here. I can click on this one here, the 8.1, and it's going to give me an idea of what it's recommending, how to go do it, the impact that it's going to have. But we're going to help and lead and guide you in ways that we're going to be able to help you keep your applications secure, managed, performant, available. And we're going to all do that through this cloud solution called the Operations Management Suite. Now, let's just kind of dive a little bit more into some of these. I'm going to come over here and look at software updates. Remember we talked a few minutes ago about the fact that the Australian organization here had recommended one of the 4 things we have to do to stop these attacks is keep our servers patched and our apps patched. Well, here I can now come take a look at the applications and server patching and get a view. So I've got 55 servers that are being managed here. There are 26 critical patches that are missing from them. One place I can see all that easy to act on. Come back and show you a little bit more. Let's go take a look, for example, here at security and audit. So here we're taking a look at things that from a security and audit perspective you're going to want to be aware of. And so this right here is maybe the most interesting part of this right here, these notable issues. I can go take a look at, how many failed logins have I had to my servers and what accounts were those? Suspicious executables being run on my servers. But again, taking data, bringing it to your attention, as Microsoft, the organization, learns, as we learn from our cloud, pouring all that learning into these solutions so that you have the ability to see these things and act on them. Capacity planning. How many of you ever worry about capacity? Well, I have the ability now to go into capacity planning, and I can see, hey, on current course and speed, you've got about 59 days of capacity left before you're going to need to have more capacity for your cloud. Again, algorithms, machine learning, we're taking into consideration all these things and then guiding you on ways to do it. Now, 2 last things on the Operations Management Suite. Change tracking. What's the first thing we all ask when there's a problem? What changed? Now we can actually give you a view of every change that has happened on a server. So here are software changes that have happened on a server. If I go, for example, and click on this Azure Dev 03, it'll literally take me in now and give me a view of every change that has happened on that server. And I can actually go through and look at every update that was made, every patch was applied. But I can get that change history now. And hopefully that'll help me find that causation, that root cause if something happens. Because that's the first question everybody asks is what changed. Now finally, let me just show you a little bit of log analytics. With the Operations Management Suite, we're actually pulling back logs back to Azure and then giving you the ability to do analytics on that. And I mentioned, we've done a lot more work with Linux. So I'm going to go do a search on Ubuntu. And what it's going to do is now going to go comb through all my logs. We can comb through millions of log files in seconds here. And so as this is combing through this, it's going to come up, it's going to show me all of the logs that I have that I can now actually start doing analytics on and start searching for particular issues. Let's go ahead and come back into that again. For some reason, it should do that a lot fast. Let's just try it again. But you get a log analytics solution here that now allows you to start digging into your logs, looking for what's happening, looking for those problems, looking for the things that may be suspicious. And there you see we have 25,000 actions that have happened in the log files now that I can now go and start doing log analytics on. So again, giving you one view of this, this is the operations management suite. It works hand in hand with System Center. It's built by the System Center team. And the way to think about this, in the same way that we have built EMS as an extension of your on-premises config manager, OMS is an extension of the System Center data center capabilities. And you're going to see this as an architecture more and more from us, where we're going to take the control plane of the application, the service that you've used, and we're going to move the control plane up into the cloud. And we'll give you this highly available, globally available control plane that allows you to then manage all your applications, all your services. And so, for example, as we think about the future of data center management, it's this marriage of System Center with OMS working together. As we think about your device management, we think about Config Manager and Intune from EMS working together to do that. And we're investing in all these hybrid solutions that allow you to start where you're at, move towards the cloud, but have an integrated hybrid solution that gives you the best of both worlds. Okay? Now, QBE is a fascinating organization here in Australia as well that is making some very interesting ways that they are using data and the way that they're using Azure. And so we thought we'd just give you a quick view into some of the things that they're doing from Azure so you get a perspective of a local company taking advantage of this. Let's take a look.
QBE is a general insurer, so we insure things like houses, vehicles, boats, marine insurance. Compliance is important because we're a heavily regulated industry, so we have to meet compliance obligations both in Australia, are federal ones, and state level obligations. So it was an important part of our choice of a cloud vendor. It allows us to do that testing and development in the cloud, but then when we're using real customer data to deploy all that software out of the cloud back into our own data center. The future that we're building from QBE is about scalable platforms that can deal to the disruption going on and even disrupt a few things ourselves.
I love that last statement. We want to be able to deal with disruption, but we want to be able to disrupt things ourselves. And I would challenge you to all think about that. Everything that we have done for the last 15, 20, 25 years is being disrupted right now. Cloud and mobility is changing so much of what we do. My encouragement to you is be a disruptor. Be that leader. And I just thought it captured so well there with QBE about how they think about this and how they think about this as an opportunity. They think about it as a requirement because these things are disrupting, but it also is an opportunity. So we talked about trustworthy. We talked about flexible. We talked about integrated. And of course, it has to be intelligent. And I think throughout the morning, we've talked in case after case about how we're bringing intelligence, how we're bringing data to bear, and putting that to work on your behalf. These are the things I would really encourage you to think about as you're making your decision on who your strategic partners are moving forward. Who's giving you that trustworthy environment? Who's giving you the flexibility you require, the integration, and then who has data that's being put to work on your behalf? And I think when I look at these attributes, I think Microsoft stands in a very unique place with our ability to do these things with you. Now, one of the things that I've found as we do these keynotes is you want to dig into the demos. And so that first line there, that Brad Ignite recap, if you go to that, it'll take you to my blog, and there's a write-up on every one of the demos that we just did. So you can get more information on it, learn a little bit more about it. But one of the things that I think everybody wants to, we're technicians, I mean, we're engineers for heaven's sakes. Everybody wants to know what was behind the covers there. And so it gives you a chance to take a look at that. If you want to follow me on Twitter, in the cloud MSFT, I love to share, and I probably share more than I should. But I believe that information empowers as well. It's been a true honor to be here. I am just blown away with the opportunities that are here in Australia. As I think about opportunities that all of us stand in front of us, I think we have opportunities to lead our businesses through this evolution, through this transition, that we're all being faced with right now. And I can tell you at Microsoft, we take this responsibility incredibly seriously. And we couldn't be more delighted with the opportunity to partner with you, the opportunities you've given us, and we look forward to partnering even more. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks again, Brad. Can we just give Brad another round of applause as well? That was amazing. So, for those that don't know me, hi, my name is Vaughn. I'm the technical evangelism lead at Microsoft. And when you look at the stories that Brad was sharing and what he was talking about, and you think back to what Sarah said earlier, we completely underestimate how far we will go in 10 years. And 10 years ago, there's absolutely no way we would have predicted what Brad would have been talking about. And in our team, we get to see all the amazing stuff that people are going to be doing with technology. And they share with us a lot of great stories, and we come across a lot of great stories. I'm going to share a couple with you now. The first one is Zoo South Australia. So Zoo SA has two zoos. They have one in Adelaide, and they have one about an hour outside Adelaide. And they were using SharePoint, and they were using Exchange for their productivity. But what they wanted to be able to do was incorporate Skype for Business to allow them to be able to communicate between the zoo in Adelaide and the zoo an hour outside Adelaide. And so initially they started using it for training. So they were using it for training, and so they were incorporating it into their learning within the business. And then they started using it actually during clinical surgery with the animals, so people could consult, but also so people could learn from that without having to travel between the sites. And then lastly, because they had implemented Skype for Business, they realized they now had this tool that allowed them to broadcast out into the zoo from different zoos as well, so people could see animals they wouldn't see otherwise. But my favorite user of Skype for Business is Alfred. Now, Alfred here is talking or communicating with a school of students or class of students. And this is something that Zoo South Australia wouldn't have been able to do again otherwise unless they'd rolled it out into their business, and it's something that they couldn't have predicted. And so what this meant is because they're being more productive and because the zoo is being more productive, it's actually freeing up the vets to do other things, and most importantly, freeing them up to care for the animals. So the next story is a bit of fun. This is Julia. Now, Julia loves one thing. There's one thing she absolutely loves, and it's bubbles. But there's one thing she hates more than anything else, and that's the taste of bubbles. And she came up with this concept for flavored bubbles, which she called Flubbles. And she came to us and said, hey, you know what? Microsoft, I want you to help me with this problem. And we're like, okay, let's see what we can do. So what she did is she drew up a heap of architecture diagrams and concepts of what she wanted to create. And we got her in contact with a flavor expert. And she came up with all these amazing flavors because strawberry was boring. We got her in contact with a designer to help her design this flubble machine that was going to make bubbles, flavored bubbles. And then we got her in contact with this man over here. His name is Mr. Froth, and he's a bubbleologist. And so they all got together. She collaborated them over Skype, using OneNote, putting all the designs together. And together, they made it. And so this is the flubble machine. It's got these giant keys, like a colored giant keyboard, and you press them, and the bubbles of the flavor of the key that you press pop out. And over here, you can see this was actually her architecture diagram that she put together on a surface. And when we talk about the bold ambitions at Microsoft, they're not just ambitions for us, they're our ambitions for everybody. They're our ambitions for Julia, for Zoo South Australia, and for everybody in this room. And they are the fibre of our business. So it's not just Satcher that's something that Satcher says, it guides the engineering. And it guides Ignite. So you'll see over the 177 sessions that are running over the next 4 days, they're going to be part of the theme of everything. And you should be thinking about them and thinking about your ambitions. So whether you're going to the cloud that Chuck Norris built, or you're cooking in the cloud with Chef, or you're going to the session where we actually will show you how we built the Surface Book or the Surface Pro keyboard. You should be thinking about, what are your ambitions? And there's a lot of content here this week over the next 4 days. Beyond the sessions, just up there, I think it is, there's the Ignite Learning Zone. Up there, you've got hands-on labs, instructor-led labs. You've got Certification Central, where you can get 50% off certification exams. So if you want to sit your certification, it's a good time to do it. And we've also got free practice exams, so you can practice as much as possible to make sure that you pass with flying colours. And then we have the Expo. The Expo will be opening at 6 p.m. tonight at the welcome reception. I'd like to thank our sponsors, AvePoint and Optus, our platinum sponsors, and our gold sponsors and our other exhibitors. There's a lot of stuff to see on the Expo. In addition to that, there's the IoT Maker Den where you can play with some Raspberry Pis and learn more about the Internet of Things. There's a Data Den where you can play with data and start to understand what it means to go and get data insights. We've also got the Speaker Lounge. You know they're all wearing the speaker shirts. That's where they'll be hanging out if you want to meet them. Make sure you get in contact with them. Over Twitter is probably the best way to do that. And let them know, and you can meet them there. Make the most of them while you're here. Then there's the Community Lounge, probably one of the most important places where you guys connect and where you start creating your own stories. And then the other thing that we have is the Hack Track. Now, down here, you may have seen it as we walked in, we have Matt. And Matt is sketching the entire keynote. And so you may have heard as you came in, he's going to be presenting tomorrow morning at the Hack Track. Now, the Hack Track is a track that's going to be happening on the expo floor, and it happens during the breaks. So you'll be able to learn that. But the Hack Track is a track which is, the theme of it effectively is we want to give you superpowers. We want to give you things that otherwise you probably wouldn't have done and things that you don't expect. So the other thing is, if you want to get access to that image, which will be shared, it'll be shared out on Twitter. This is the hashtag for the event. If you want to know something, if you want to share something, if you want to ask a question, use the hashtag. But it's also how you're going to get that image. There's also a few offers that are available during the event. So my favorite is you can get up to $500 off a Surface Pro 3. There are a lot of other offers. When you're on the expo floor and you're looking at devices and talking to people about devices, make sure you ask what offers are available. There's a lot, and I can't get through them all now. There's so much stuff going on this week, and you need to be able to keep track of it all. So My Ignite is where you're going to be keeping track of all your sessions and all your evals and what's coming up. So you ought to have used it to register. You'd ought to have an account, log in, make sure you're using it. The other thing is make sure you're doing your evals. So you've got your lanyards. When you swipe into a session, you'll actually be able to evaluate that session later during the session. So make sure you do it. There will be prizes for evals. And then that brings us to the closing keynote. Now, the closing keynote is going to be on 2 p.m. on Friday. It's going to be Dr. Jason Fox. Jason is going to share with you how a framework that will help you take all the things that you learned this week and actually go and action them. So you don't just sort of go home and don't then action all the stuff that you've learned this week. And lastly is Big Night. Big Night will be on Thursday night at Movie World. There will be band jam. The other thing is that at 6:45 p.m., the buses leave here. First people on the buses are the first people on the rides, so don't be late. Okay, and with that, I'd like to welcome you all to Ignite. I hope you make the most of the next 4 days, and I hope to talk to you over the next 4 days. Thank you.
We have traveled land and sea, but as long as you are with me, there's no place I'd rather be. I would away forever, exalted in the sea, as long